Okay, everybody, please be seated. We're starting. The leader wishes to speak for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's only a brief announcement. Members will have heard the various exchanges between two of the members, Councillor Lilly and Councillor Whitehouse. They have now addressed that issue, and as far as they're concerned, that matter is now closed.
Councillor Debbie Andre.
Thank you, Chair. Before I present my motion, I would like to declare a personal interest in that the Chair of the AONB Steering Committee is well known to me. Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to present this motion. I'm assuming that members have all read the motion, so I won't read it in full. But the essence is that we have a real opportunity presented to us with the Glover Review to make representations to government to create a new designation for the island. For a long time now, the island has not been recognised by government with island status, and this does present us. The key word in this motion is opportunity. The review that is underway plainly presents a chance for the island to create and define a designation that recognises the fact that we are an island, a designation that recognises we have fantastic landscape and natural resources that need to be preserved and sustained, and a designation that also recognises and supports the fact that we have a need to regenerate, which new or varied rules relating to our environment and development may be defined to support and facilitate. It's important not to get hung up on the term island park. The opportunity presented by the Glover Review is not just to create a variation on the existing AONB or a national park. We can potentially create something completely new based on what this island needs, and not just to try to fit the island into some pre-existing or generic designation. We have the opportunity to propose the creation of a holistic designation that serves both rural areas and towns and has appropriate regard to the relationship between the two. Effectively, an opportunity to create a concept for the island to help sustain it for future generations. The name it's given is essentially irrelevant. Question 20 of the current call for evidence states, what views do you have on whether areas should be given new designations? For instance, the creation of new national parks or AONBs, or new types of designations for marine areas, urban landscapes, or those near built-up areas. The review is looking for ways to make areas better, so let's tell them what we need. What we also have here is an opportunity to streamline the massive regulation that applies to our landscape. 87% of the island is currently subject to some form of designation. A new all-island concept could encapsulate all this into one overarching scheme where everything works together. Question 23 of the call for evidence states, the review has been asked to consider how designated landscapes work with other designations, such as nature trails, sites of special scientific interest, special areas of conservation, national nature reserves, and special protected areas. Do you have any thoughts on how these relationships work and whether they could be improved? If we are looking as we are at how things could be changed to benefit the chances of facilitating regeneration on this island, that question begs an answer from us and presents us with a great opportunity. Therefore, I commend my motion to members and ask for their support. Thank you.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Maitland. Councillor Whitehouse wishing to speak.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment which was circulated earlier in accordance with common sense and common courtesy. This is a very straightforward amendment to avoid
talk and you lot can't. It's like Christmas here, looking around. The lights are going off now. Ian Ward's is nearly off. Oh, that's it, we're there. Excellent, it's reset. So, in relation to the amendment, this is, I think, the right course of action, and I shall be supporting the amendment. I can tell you now that Jonathan Bacon has told me personally that he came forward with the Island Park phrase, and it's his aspiration that there is a current review going on, which Councillor Abraham and Councillor Hobart will be able to verify, because yesterday they went to London with with Jonathan Bacon to speak to Lord Gardner. The thing that this amendment does for me is it keeps the flexibility. The most important thing for us on this island is that we don't support something that we don't know about, we don't know the implications of. The government are not thinking Isle of Wight, they're thinking UK, and if we give them an inch to take a designation, whether it's a national park or an island park or any other park, what will mean that we lose control of our own destiny. One of the things that we've been proud of here on the island is that we have our planning committee, we make our decisions, and we can decide. Now, I think this amendment requires the responsible cabinet member to undertake further research. Let's get the facts. Let's know where we are, maybe good, maybe bad. I think in his haste and maybe his enthusiasm, Mr Bacon has sought to protect the ANOB and possibly extend it elsewhere. But you can't have that on the one hand and then support a recommendation that regenerates the whole of Newport, West Cowes and East Cowes, and you don't even know if the Island Park's going to undermine the whole process. You can't do that, I don't think. So my view is on this, it's a very nice-spirited, and I am grateful to Councillor Andre for her upfront approach on this. But we need to be very sensible on these things. We protect our island. We don't rush into an island plan coming up in 1 month's time. We need to get that through. We need to deal with that. We don't want to muddy the waters. And I would encourage all members to take a sensible course at this stage and say that ask the responsible cabinet member to have a look into this, pros and cons. Thank you, Jeff.
I would indeed like to speak to the amendment, thank you. There seems to be a lot of confusion here. The Glover Review is giving us an opportunity to create a new designation. And what I'm hearing with this amendment and from Councillor Stewart is that there's this idea that something is going to be imposed on us. I would be happy to accept an amendment that took out the word "and threats," because if we are creating our own designation, whatever we call it, then surely we would not be putting the threats into there in the first place. So I'd like to make this very clear. This is an opportunity, a very real opportunity, for a completely new designation without threats.
Fuller, are you speaking to the amendment?
I don't know what I'm speaking to really. What I wanted to do was, first of all, mention that I'm a member of the AONB Management Committee. I'm representing the Isle of Wight Council, and also the chairman is known to me as well, as he's probably known to most members in the chamber. So I would like to declare that as a non-pecuniary interest, please, Chairman. One of the things I wanted to ask as well is, I totally agree with what Councillor Stewart says. There is a lot of confusion over this, but I don't think it's just coming from the chairman of the AONB. I think it also comes from our MP as well, because I understand that our MP would like to see national park status for the Isle of Wight. Now, if the MP wants to see national park status for the Isle of Wight, how is that going to impact upon our planning authority? You know, national parks have their own planning authorities, and that would take those decisions away from the Isle of Wight Council, which I would be quite concerned about. So I think more research does need to take place. But I think with the motion that we see within Debbie's proposal, I think that we are taking a step forward to finding out a little bit more, and I would be supporting the motion, and I will probably support the amendment as well, because I think they're both supporting what we want to achieve for the future of our Isle of Wight. Thank you.
Okay, because the last item took 3/4 of an hour to discuss and come to a conclusion, we now need to take a vote to extend the meeting by at least an hour, I would say. So those of you that had sweepstakes that we would be out by 9 have lost. And could you all please now move to the vote that we extend the meeting for an hour? Those in favour? Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? That motion's carried, so we're here till 10 o'clock. Thank you. Next one to speak is Councillor Judy Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. It is right and proper that we do further research. There's so many designations that do come with their own restrictions, and of course I've got the biosphere going on as well, so I wonder how that that fits into it. And you know, the council doesn't always make decisions with enough information, and in fact one of the reasons we've got the budget early so we can delve down, get some more information and get the truth behind it, because the council hasn't got a good track record on this, because 11 years ago it didn't see that I'd end up sitting in the chamber because of one of the decisions. So there we go.
Councillor Abraham.
Thank you, Chairman. I, along with Councillor Hobart and Mr Bacon, went up and met with the MP to meet with Lord Gardiner to discuss the call for evidence, basically. And on the way up on the train, I did question Jonathan what was meant by an island park, and I just didn't get a clear idea of what he was proposing, because personally I don't agree with the MP on the idea of a national park. I think it could impede a lot of things that we actually want to do. There is confusion over what can and cannot be included in it. I fully support the AONB, and we might one day want to see an extension to that. That will come at a later part of the once the evidence has been collected. That will then go on for a consultation, and I think Mr Glover will come down to the Isle of Wight and actually meet with us. And rather to make a rash decision tonight, and I think that it is a rash decision, we actually do look at all our designations that we've got across the island, and we actually come to a consensus. I don't rule out the idea of a national park, but the one thing I want to make sure that we are concentrating on as a council is our local plan. I think we need to get that into place. We're going to do extensive consultations on that. It's backed up by our wish for regeneration. Now, we've got the Bay area that is in desperate need of some form of support. That, I think, is what we need to concentrate on first. If we then, or Debbie comes back with an idea at a later date for the national park, I think perhaps then it's the time to debate it. But I think tonight it is just too quick to actually agree to this without actually knowing what you're actually signing up to. You know, we sign up to all sorts of things without actually knowing. You know, it's be careful of what you wish for, I think, on some of these things. It's all fine and dandy saying that, you know, we've got this great concept of what the island is. Yeah, we're an island. Everybody knows the Isle of Wight's an island. You know, you're a fool if you don't see that. But I hope members will agree to this amendment. I think it is right and proper. It doesn't totally destroy what Debbie is trying to do, but it just gives us a bit of background to it.
Hey, I've still got a number of people. Councillor Brodie, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. And I have to say I agree with pretty much all of what Barry Abrahams just said, perhaps to his surprise. But I do think a national park for the Isle of Wight would be entirely counter to what we're trying to do in terms of the regeneration of certain areas of the Isle of Wight. I think it would put major restrictions on us. I will say, and just to show I'm a fair man, because I've had to go at you a lot tonight, but I will not take lessons from a gentleman who did walk out of the leadership of this council on a Monday before a full council 2 years ago. And Councillor Whitehouse was rubbished about that earlier on, but I will never forgive former councillors Bacon and Stubbins for walking out without even telling their colleagues beforehand. And I'm not going to be lectured by him regarding the future status of the Isle of Wight. And I'm quite surprised that you're bothering to take him to see government ministers, because he is discredited, in my view. And if he's got solicitors, he can use them on me any time he wants. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Barry.
I thought what the leader said made good sense, but the problem is it came on top of Councillor Whitehouse having cheap shots at Jonathan Bacon. And now Councillor Brodie's jumped on the bandwagon. I thought this was a sensible thing, worth debating and worth listening to. And I agree with what the leader said about doing it a different way. And I'm quite open to that. But why we should sit here tonight in extra time slagging off Jonathan Bacon, I'm sorry, I totally disagree with that. There's no need for it, and you should both be ashamed of yourself.
Not in the slightest.
Councillor Hobart.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I'm the responsible cabinet member for the AONB. I will be consulting. There's a consultation carrying on now until the 18th of December, which I hope we'll all take part in. Julian Glover can only know what we want if we tell him, and that's what the consultation's all about. I hope he's going to visit us. He's doing his best to visit all the national parks and AONBs. He's going around the country visiting them, but we have to tell him what we want before he gets here, so he has some idea of what we can have. Obviously, there's probably hope from Mr. Bacon that there may be grant funding involved in this from government, which would be very useful, and not to mention a little regeneration within the AONBs. I'm sure we can improve on them. Whether we're going to increase the areas, if that's what this island park's all about, I'm not sure. Where, for instance, the gap between Newtown, the Hampstead coast and the Tennyson coast, there's non-AONB, it's not earmarked for development of any sort, in as far as housing particularly, so it may be, is that what the island park's going to be? It also, of course, we have marine conservation zones around our coast, which could be included in that as well. That's a new designation, and they're not entirely fixed as yet. So we've got a long way to go. But I think it's very exciting. I think we've got we could regenerate the AONBs and make them much more exciting. What they mustn't do is affect the future, the review of our new island plan, which is coming forward. That is the danger of a national park. The other thing was suggested was linking up with the New Forest as part of the New Forest National Park. Well, I personally think that is right out of the question. We will totally lose our independence to the mainland then if we go along on that one. Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Andre, would you as the mover of the original motion, you've got the right to reply. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Barry for actually bringing us back to the matter in hand. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Hobart, because I know he seems to have actually got what this new concept is about. But I would just highlight that this is not just about the AONB. It takes in a much wider remit. This is a call for evidence of a new designation, and Councillor Abraham mentioned the island plan. There's no reason why we can't work with the island plan to put proposals forward to shape a new designation. And I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Brodie was saying, the fact that this does support regeneration. We can shape this to be a designation that is right for the island, that will support regeneration and our infrastructure. Thank you.
Right, we're moving to the vote on the amendment, please. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you. That's 24, none against, 6 abstentions. That motion's carried. Amendment, sorry, is carried. Okay, it's been, I think we have discussed it enough. I think everyone's had the chance to speak. So, sorry. We need to actually get a vote to move to the vote. I know, all those in favour of moving straight to the vote. Are there any against? Any abstentions, please? That's 25 for, 1 against. Technically, Debbie, you can speak again, should you wish.
If I may, Chair, all I would like to say is, with the revised motion, I would like to propose a further revision, which I would be happy with, to take out the 2 words "and threats." We can't.
Already moved to the vote.
I did actually propose that in my summing up, that if those 2 words were taken out, I would accept it, the amendment.
You are permitted to propose an amendment. I need a seconder on that. Okay, right, we're moving to the vote then on this revised motion in front of you. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 19 for, 3 abstentions, 3 against, so that's carried. Okay, moving on, John Nicholson.
Members, thank you for your indulgence. I know these are the last 2 motions. They are timely important, so I'll get through as fast as we can. Pubs and taverns have been a way of life in this country for 2,000 years, since the Romans. And ale is part of our culture, an essential part of our history. Not so long ago, beer was safer to drink than water.
and whole beer brewed from whole natural ingredients formed an essential part of the nutritional diet, deriving healthy supplements that were not otherwise readily available or obtainable to many people. But pubs are more than this. They were centres for meetings, for trade, for banking, for discussion and exchange of ideas. Many pub signs, made law by King Richard II in 1393, whose emblem was the White Hart, still tell the type of activity that was conducted there. It was in a pub that the author of the most volatile book in history contemplated his works, The Rights of Man by Thomas Paine. And it was in The Eagle and Child that Tolkien enthused on his stories. If it were not for the pub, we may not have had the Industrial Revolution and no Royal Society, and under threat of our national drink, no campaign for real ale, the world's most successful consumer organisation, and no craft beer revolution that is sweeping the world today. Until recent times, pubs were either privately owned or owned by a local brewer whose sole interest was to sell their products. Nowadays, however, big business is different. Some might say heartless. And in this country is dominated by property companies who also controls consumables of the trade. Imagine you take out a mortgage or a rent agreement and part of the deal is that you buy all your groceries through the lender. Then you find out that they are supplied by the local supermarket and you're paying very much more than your neighbour who buys direct. Then to top it all, your rent mortgage goes up and maybe 2 or 3 times that of your neighbours in a similar type of property. Such has been the concern over the activity and ethics of these large pervasive companies that a series of reviews and legislation have led to the pub code legislation in 2016, allowing landlords to opt for rent-only terms after a period of a few years. But it isn't working, demonstrably, as landlords on the island are still suffering financial collapse. And in the face of above free market prices. The modern pub still serves a strong community function. The recent studies of Oxford University has shown how important the social connections that a pub provides is in providing a sense of worth. Is that a time up? Yeah. Okay. Pardon? 5 minutes. Was it? Yeah. Seemed like 2.
He was on a roll.
Well.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Nicholson's motion?
Chair, I'll second it, but I think, and there may be other members in the room, I must declare an interest insofar as I am a supporter of and user of pubs on the Isle of Wight. Yeah.
How many others wish to declare interest that they use pubs on the Isle of Wight? I don't drink alcohol. Taste for how? Who did anyone get those declarations of interest, or are we just being rather silly now at 9:15?
Really real declarations, are they?
Councillor Stewart wishes to record that he uses pubs and declare that interest. And those others that put your hands up. Can you put your hands up again, please? Don't know who's taken a note. Do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, I think the heart of this motion is really good. We all know that we have pubs on this island that are now suffering from certain pressures which they're being put under by their landlords. I have one in my ward area which is at great risk at the moment, and I know there are other members around the island, and I think anything we can do to stop the loss of our pubs, you only got to look at the buses and pubs weekend to see how valued they are, and I just think we should support John fully on this and send a message out that it's not acceptable on the island.
Right, I've got a huge list of people wishing to speak, so we're going to be here even longer. The first one is Councillor Fuller to put his hands up.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I, for my sins, hold my local surgeries in pubs. 2 out of the 7 surgeries that I hold each month are held in local pubs. People come to talk to me in their local pub about major planning applications, adult services, traffic matters, waste bins, potholes and dog dirt. That's what I hear about in the local pubs. Getting back to this being a serious issue, pubs are community hubs, and certainly talking to our publicans, they are sort of like community leaders, and I think that it is so important that we support our struggling pub trade on the island. So I'm totally behind John on this, and I wish that we can have unanimous support for his proposal. Thank you.
Okay, next one, Councillor Reg Barry.
Thank you. I didn't declare an interest because I gave up drinking last night at 10:15. But seriously, this is a really serious thing to the Isle of Wight. It's not just these landlords, it's developers who come over, and I could go on for hours about the roadside inn. They blow up a pub, relatively cheap, do also, but I think everybody knows about that, so I won't go into it. But also, mainly it's village pubs. Every pub, if you take all over the New Inn, Wight Hart, what you mentioned, you imagine holding a walking festival and a cycling festival on this island with no pubs in the villages. So you've got nowhere to stop, you've got nowhere to get something to eat. They're part and parcel of the tourist trade, and yet they're not protected in any way. Anyone can come over, buy it up, turn it into a shop, turn the top into it in flats, then put in an application to turn the shop into another flat. And that could go on all over the island. When Barry draws up his 5-year plan, his island plan, it should state in there that you cannot change a pub. A pub should stay as it is. About 4 years ago, I brought a motion to this council, about the only one I've ever bought actually, about making every village pub on our island an asset of community value. That was before the roadside fiasco. I was told then, no, you can't do all pubs. Each one will have to be taken on its merit. They took each one on its merit, and the roadside's gone. And then you've got the New Inn at Shafleet, that's a bit dodgy, and it goes all over. And unless we do something seriously, instead of sitting here laughing and joking about it, we put it into either make every village pub on the island an asset of community value, which is possible because different areas in the country have done this. That's what we should be doing to protect our village pubs. If Newport loses a pub, it hasn't got the same effect it has on if Portsfield loses a pub or Gurnard loses its pub. Those are the pubs that really count to us because they're part of our tourism structure as well as our way of life. I couldn't imagine it without a pub. You know, you imagine going through St Helens if the Vine wasn't there. You're like walking through a field, wouldn't it? There'd be nothing else. Just a few houses, a post office, and goodbye. That's it, you've done St Helens. Whereas now, especially if you go over there, the carnival day, the place is alive, people enjoying themselves. It's all part of that pub. Yes, that would make a lovely residential home for somebody.
Councillor Bertie.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion because Councillor Nicholson is absolutely passionate about this subject. But I'd like to go on public records on behalf of many, many pubs on the island to thank John and his camera team for putting on the excellent Beer and Buses weekend a few weeks ago, which attracted 12,000 people, so full marks to John on that one. I want to bring, towards the end of the motion, it says to consider active engagement. And John might like to know that my local, the Pier View in Cowes, reopened its doors today at 12 o'clock after being closed for 4 months. And at the end of this very, very long meeting, I intend to go back to Cowes and I intend to actively engage.
Councillor Abraham.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion. In fact, if I didn't, I think my grandfather Abraham would come back and haunt me because I think he knew every pub in Newport in the day, and his local was the Clarendon Arms, which is long gone. It is the heart and soul of the community. You know, we've lost so much from our villages. A lot of our post offices have now gone. But I think we owe it to the communities to try wherever possible to actually support the local pubs. I know I've talked to John about it before the motion came in. I believe there are things that we can do through the planning process, and also work with our town and parish councils so that they are recorded as community assets. I will leave it there because the hour is late.
Julie Jones-Evans, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very, very important motion you put forward because our publicans, some of them are fighting and, you know, with one hand behind their back, and this really isn't fair. I do wonder how we can engage as a council. And one thing, as I've been listening to the debate, that struck me is the whole nighttime economy that we're looking at. And there's one item in the budget proposals is the car park charging till right through the night, from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, £1. Now you imagine the Castle in Newport High Street, how that is going to affect them. Now they're just reopening their doors, the 16th century pub, very, very important to Newport, and two people have decided to take it on, despite obviously have one hand behind their back. But us as a council put a proposal forward to make everyone have to pay in the high street overnight. Now, are they going to be going there, or are they going to be going somewhere else, or maybe buying some alcohol or drinks and going home? I think we need to think carefully about what we're saying to the nighttime economy as a council. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Hastings.
Thank you, Chairman. In a former life, doing business all over the south of England, and including the Isle of Wight, I spent some years supplying the pub trade. There was a marked difference between the free trade and the tide trade. Those who owned their pub could diversify and offer new and different products both in food and drink in order to increase their business. Those tenants who were tied to a pub company would often tell me their tale of woe during my visits, and these are pretty much described by others here tonight, including Councillor Nicholson that brought this motion. And this is unfair, the way they're treated. The pub is not just a drinking place, it is a community hub, especially in rural areas such as such I think needs protecting. I would urge all town and parish councils to look at creating assets of community value status for their pubs. One of the big problems with pub companies is that they are often in reality property companies. And when a pub is failing through high rents and tight supplies, which is of course the fault of the pub company, squeezing out their pound of flesh from tenants, they simply look for a new tenant to do the same thing over again. And after a while, a tenant cannot be found, so they put on their other hat as a property company and look for a buyer to convert to a supermarket, flats, or some other residential property. This is a shame because pubs are places where families can meet for Sunday lunch, some run quizzes and other community functions, which helps against isolation of some people, especially in rural areas. In my ward, the former Countryman was sold for development and the pub was lost. But not only was the pub lost, it also sat derelict for some years and was a blight on the AONB entranceway to Bryston. which was a terrible advert for our tourism in the area. With this in mind, and in view of others we have heard here today, I would like the Cabinet to consider the possibility of going as far as, with the right set of circumstances and the test of financial viability, the Council actually buying some of these pubs. This might sound strange to some people, but just think of this as an investment in the community and a win-win situation, because if we own the asset and collect the rent and the rates, rather than the pub company making the money, we do. We can also make sure that the right tenants are placed in the pub, who know how to run a good pub and are charged a reasonable rent, which means that they can actually create a successful business and grow their business without the fear of their rents going out of all proportion. These publicans would be tenants of the council, and could even be those that would, under the pub companies, have ended up as part of the housing waiting list after being forced out of their pub. Also, because our only involvement would be there as their landlord, they would have every chance of success, because they would be free to buy their stock and from wherever they should so choose. And my time has run out, so I support this motion clearly. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. Last Saturday night, I was actually at a pub with Councillor Hastings and Councillor Nicholson. I'd like to just put on record I am actually teetotal. There was a meeting there relevant to the motion that Councillor Nicholson has put forward. And I have to be honest, until Councillor Hastings spoke, I was a little unclear as to how the current administration could facilitate and encourage. So I would thank Councillor Hastings for, I think, putting a very conclusive argument and allowing me to be able to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping that so brief. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. Obviously I support this motion because actually pubs have traditionally within this country have been the place of community and involvement. One of the things that I passed on to Councillor Nicholson tonight was I was a founder and part of a fund decades ago called the Community and Finance fund, which actually is the biggest supporter financially of communities taking over pubs and actually saving them, and has actually helped pubs all over the actual UK. And I think one of the things that's giving the information to Councillor Nicholson is how we can resource our communities, like in Nettleston, and that where these pubs actually come under threat, that actually the local communities are empowered and enabled and access expertise like this fund that actually knows how to do this, so that we can actually save those pubs. And I think if we had that support over at the time in Nettleston, and perhaps we wouldn't be in a position sort of now. So we do need to actually put those support networks in the communities so that they are able to get all the resources, all the expertise to be able to save their local pubs.
Councillor Nicholson, you forgot the right to come back before I go to the vote, please.
Yeah, fantastic support, fantastic ideas. Let's go straight to the vote.
All those in favour of this motion, please show. Those against? Abstentions? Okay, there's 22 in favour, no abstentions and no one against. Thank you very much. That motion's carried. Councillor Nicholson, next one.
Right. In 100 years, what have we learnt that we couldn't in 1,000? People fight to lay their ideas and will as the version that is grounded. It's the victor's righteous strife that upholds the liberty of life. The vanquished foe, though human too, their view is lost to history's sight. But let us remember the persons who fought for cause and ideal, some with their lives and others yet whose trauma lingers still. The dead are dead, and we bestow our honour on their sacrifice. But for those who live on in torment, our regard is not so nice. Think on the homeless veteran who in our service behaviour changed, those bloody sights, gut-wrenching terrors all endured in our name. If appreciation is understanding, let's ask, do we do our best to help and calm the traumatised who fought for all the rest? Let us take this time to reflect on the more that we could do. Consider the suffering servicee, for the grace of God is you. We're quick to turn our heads from the lived reality they bring home. It's not nice to see through their eyes, nor to blame them all the same. But what is real compassion, if not to accept and understand, to not condone but facilitate, to soothe the faltering hand, to admit and decommission, to calm those troubles once endured by those who fought for our freedom, one we so readily ignore. To find comfort for the homeless, relieve those that are in distress, understand the misunderstood, allow the tired time to rest. Help them to fish again, to prosper in what they then can give, but surviving ignored, unhelped in trauma, that's no way to live. And we have it in our power to make this change today, to better help the fallen, that they may regain their way. Let's engage and do for them what they, for us, have dearly paid, secure their liberty and dignity, a worthy debt repaid.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Ward.
Chairman, members, please, may I seek your indulgence. I'd like to say, there for the grace of God go I. By sheer coincidence, this week, 40 years ago, I started my first operational tour in the Ardougne district of Belfast. During that tour, I was shot at. I can still see the bullet strikes above my head. I can see men in my patrol brick, leaping over a wall because machine gun bullets were bouncing off the pavement in front of them. I was blown over by a bomb blast and experienced another car bomb that luckily couldn't get in the camp gate, but blew up anyway. I went on to do nigh on 3 years in Northern Ireland, in Belfast and Londonderry, and I also did 9 months in Bosnia, drove through towns completely destroyed, not a soul there, and then you drive further up the road and there the residents are in prison camp, and you think, what the hell is happening? Those sort of things affect you, and they never go away. You may laugh, but when I walk down the street, I'm still looking for snipers. When I'm driving, I'm looking for ambush sites. You know, that's how it is. I'm the person who sits with my back against a wall and watch the door to see who's coming in. 40 years, 50 years later now, I still do that. It's with you all the time. It never goes away. In my capacity here as Armed Forces Champion, I've visited veterans. I've seen men crying on the floor. I've seen men angry, really angry, because nobody understands them. I've seen men who just are violent, hate everybody. And that's all the effects of being divorced, if you like, from your comrades. When you go through an operation, you bond with your comrades. And they are probably your comrades for life. I am still in touch with the people I served with in Belfast 40 years ago. And you come back and you're presented with your family, and your family don't understand. And you resent them because they don't understand.
and it takes a long time to decompress. And in those days, we served in garrisons, and I decompressed, luckily along with my comrades. But nowadays, people don't do that. Soldiers, there's no big garrisons anymore and things like that, and they suffer. And as I said, within the last few years, those examples of soldiers I met are real, and they're here now. So please, can I plead with you to support this motion? Thank you.
Point of clarification, Chairman. The motion, which was rather clumsily worded, it should have been amended. That's the correct one.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Councillor Ward, for that very moving, and thank you, Councillor Nicholson, for bringing this forward. I didn't serve in the forces. My profession for many years or many decades was actually a counselling psychologist, and my specialism was post-traumatic stress. And I was based in Birmingham, which is the QE was the main hospital where soldiers would actually come, and also most of our refugees and asylum seekers that would come from wars like Bosnia as well. And I particularly did work with the Bosnian community and soldiers that served, because they would come to the same hospital within that. And I'd actually worked with veterans and refugees and asylum seekers from most of the wars over the last 30 or so years. I had to actually give up eventually the work, because I was doing about 25 cases a week, and there's only so much after about 25 years of hearing about genocide, hearing about people being blown up in front, and actually I had to actually call that a day. The tragedy is, as you have said, is there's not enough support, and on this island there are many veterans who actually do not get the level of the support and have very much the same experience as described by Councillor Ward, of they have visions and visualisations on a daily basis. I helped a family recently get rehoused, and you actually had a veteran from his hospital bed with back problems actually bidding for a house and whatever. That is just not, it's not acceptable, and we need to look at the covenant, and we need to actually get many people on the island who have post-traumatic stress have actually got to go to Southampton to actually get counselling, and we need to actually have better services over here, and I'm willing to work with Councillor Ward and the Covenant with the Isle of Wight Council to actually really get proper support for post-traumatic stress on this island and actually honour that legacy. Thank you.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson, for bringing this motion, and Councillor Ward for that really emotional and very open revealment of what you go through on a daily basis. So thank you for sharing that. I think so much this is hidden. Just recently, my cousin, whose husband just come back from Canada, and he was in the parachute regiment, as was my father and grandfather. And I said, "Are you coming down to the fireworks?" She said, "Well, no, he won't come down. That's just the worst. He will not come down to the fireworks." It just brings everything back to him. And that gets me thinking, I know Italy have now gone, as a town, Italy have gone to silent fireworks. Perhaps that's something that we could do on the island. Kind of the first silent firework place in England, that would be something that would really help a lot of people. I've had I told you earlier that I, volunteer at a food bank, and one day there was a young man there, and he was sofa surfing and trying to find some work, and obviously didn't want to be at food bank asking for some food. Just through having a chat and a cup of coffee, as we do down there, while he was waiting for his food to be got together, he told me of why he was sat there, and one of the reasons was because he was suffering from the post-traumatic distress, because he had his best friend blown up next to him, killed next to him. And this is a 25-year-old, and I'm sat there thinking, I just don't know what to do. I didn't have any tools to help this young man, and I just felt so helpless. So anything we can do to strengthen the support that's out there, we just have to do it, because there's lives being wasted, not only wasted through actually being taken when they're on active service, but then it's the fallout afterwards as well, those who survive.
Councillor Fuller.
I'm going to make it very quick. I think one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that the Isle of Wight has more veterans per head of population than anywhere else in the country. Because of that, I think we owe it to our service personnel and their families to provide as much support for these people as we possibly can, and I wholeheartedly support Councillor Nicholson's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. I was with Councillor Ward and some other councillors when we were at the official opening on the 16th of May 2018 of the Veterans Outreach Support. I think if anybody is listening here, this is being live streamed and there are veterans listening to this, we need to make it very clear that VOS has come to the island. They are here on the third Wednesday of every month. They work from 12 to 5 p.m. at the Riverside Centre at the Quay, Newport. They are all former members of the British Armed Forces, and they will give support from welfare, well-being and mental health. We're very lucky that they came to the island and decided to set that outreach up. I'm not saying by any means that it's enough, but what I do want to make it clear that there is somewhere that people can go, and I'd like to ensure that they are directed there.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, briefly, Chair, I thank Ian for his heartfelt explanation. I have, in my own previous career, seen many people who have died in one form or another. And the one thing I always remember is, and it comes back to the remembrance, I was thinking about the remembrance service, I went to 3 this year, and the Newport one mainly. There's a phrase we use, every contact leaves a trace. So I sat and watched Claire for a few seconds come and sit next to you spontaneously, and I think if we can do one thing as councillors, is when we do that little bit, we turn up with our wreath or we pay a bit of respect, that will leave a trace. It's just a message from us that we care. You can't solve everything, but you can send a message. So I thank Ian for that, I thank John for bringing this up, and I think again those out on live feed, all the councillors in here who can get drawn into all the political stuff actually care, and we show it in many ways, and I'm just grateful I can say a few words to your motion.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson, do you wish to say anything to sum up?
Yeah, the point of this motion was to raise awareness, and I think we've done that, and I think it's fair to say that this council recognises the sacrifice endured by service personnel for us in fighting to preserve our liberty and freedom to argue and disagree as a democracy, and should reflect upon the traumas that they have suffered and in some cases continue to suffer. We should recognise and be more active in addressing those issues.
Okay, I'm going to move to the vote now. All those in favour of this motion, please. Any against? Any abstentions? That motion's carried. Right to, numbers. We're dwindling in numbers. Who can wonder? 23 in favour, no abstentions, none against. Right, moving on to item number 6, which is member question time of the leader. Councillor Lilly, was there a problem?
No, I was going to suggest, couldn't we actually all accept written responses to our answers?
Right, so we've had a proposition that we accept those because we've got the answers here written to us. Well, that's been seconded. All those in favour of that, please. What numbers have we got? Right, not all members have got one. Those against? Any abstentions? (18 for, 3 against and 1 abstention, so that's carried. Okay, so it just comes to me now at 9:45 at night. It's my daughter's birthday and I haven't even had a chance to speak to her because she's been at work all day, so I'm going to wish her a happy birthday and I'm going to wish you all an enjoyable Christmas because this is the last time that we get together, and more's the pity that we can't get together except in a full council meeting, because I think we would probably talk a lot more and there would be a lot more constructive stuff. So I wish you all an enjoyable Christmas spent with family and friends, and good health for the new year. Thank you. Good night.
Members, Laura raised a really important point there. I've realised that there's not one forum through which we as members, and no disrespect to officers, in the absence of officers, get an opportunity to speak to each other. It was something I was going to consider for the new year. Can you just indicate to me if you're interested? If you're not, that's fine. If you are, I'll make some arrangements for that.
Yep. Night, everyone. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.